So I believe you can now see my PowerPoint presentation, and looks like we can't expand it, but I will just go ahead with this right now. So I'll spend a little time explaining the basics of web design, why you should learn it, and dive further into HTML. This is definitely a lot of information, so yeah, just diving right in. So when dealing with web design, we use a language called HTML. This is an acronym for Hypertext Markup Language, which according to Wikipedia is for documents designed to be displayed in your web browser. These browsers include names such as Google Chrome, Safari, Mozilla Firefox, or Microsoft Edge if you're on the PC. Further paraphrasing Wikipedia, HTML can be assisted by technologies such as cascading style sheets, or CSS for short, and scripting languages such as JavaScript. I'll later show some examples of CSS and JavaScript, but I will be focusing on HTML. You could say HTML is a text file that integrates text, or as we say copy in the industry, images and various forms of multimedia like video or audio. HTML is currently on version 5.2, and the language has been around since the early 90s. I won't bore you too much with its history, but you can read about it by doing a quick Google search or simply visit its wiki page for a brief overview. It's important to note that HTML is not a programming language. Markup languages, which is what HTML markup languages in general are more of a way to organize and structure data, which will make more sense shortly. So why learn web design? There are about 4 billion websites on the internet roughly, or according to one source, with about 4 million still active. Being on the internet is pretty much unavoidable. So as users visiting websites every day, we don't necessarily see the actual HTML, but it's something that has directly had an impact on everyone, and it's only grown from day one. You will see various HTML snippets on the internet, such as on YouTube or Spotify, or for embedding code on a separate website. You may see some services that allow you to customize web pages that enable HTML or CSS, such as blogs like WordPress, or e-commerce software like Shopify or even eBay. Knowing about this can only be an advantage, and it's a great addition to have on your resume at the very least. Please feel free to add it after this session, and I'm not joking either. Hold on for a second. I see that we have another. Make sure everything is. Hi, Jack. Thank you for joining in. I just have to mute you. I hear some background noise, so. Yeah. And let me get back to the presentation. So again, let's continue here. So my experience with web design, I was first exposed to web design and HTML back in 1997 approximately, but I started to get formal training just 2 years later, and that really changed my own path. I went on to art school at Columbia College, Chicago in the city, and part of my major was web development. Note that web design and development are a little different. When talking about web design, it's more about the aesthetics and getting things together, but web development is comprised of the more advanced processes involved with websites. This includes creating websites to act more like software. I am a developer that knows programming languages like PHP, JavaScript, Ruby, some Python, and Java. Formerly, I've been an instructor in the past. In fact, that was my internship one summer, and I enjoyed my time as a teaching assistant, where I got to help a class of junior high and high school students to learn the basics of HTML. It was pretty rewarding, and now I get to create this condensed version for all of you. So what you will need is a computer, Sublime Text, or a text editor of your choice. Sublime is technically what's called an integrated development environment, called an IDE, containing a text editor. Using this program provides a small glimpse into the world of web design professionals, and it's technically free to use. Google Chrome or some type of internet browser, but I definitely am partial to Google Chrome for its speed and its ease of use. Again, the other kinds of browsers are Safari, Microsoft Edge, Firefox, Opera. There are similar names as well. And optional is an internet connection, but it definitely helps, especially when you access internet content to apply to your web page. So let's get started with HTML. And I will switch over to Sublime. I don't want to do that. Let me So this is Sublime, and we need to first of all save an HTML document. So let's go ahead and do that. I already have a document called index.html, and you just want to make sure that you save it. Save into a directory of your choice, but just make sure that it has that extension .html. Yeah, we often name our main page index.html, and it's specific for web pages. In the document itself, we will want to write the following. Hold on for a second. Let's go ahead and save that. Let's replace it. So to begin an HTML document, you type in HTML and press tab, but essentially what happens is that it formats these tags to be enclosed within these brackets, you can see that it starts with the first tag here, but then it ends with this with the same tag but preceded by a /, and this is how you establish certain sections or certain tags. One of the nice things about Sublime and IDEs is that they're nice shortcuts to write your code, and that's was just an example that I did, and you'll see more of it shortly. So yeah, think about this markup code as your main container of sorts. We'll be adding more tags between these two HTML tags. I will encourage students to save often. It's actually second nature to me to save my work frequently. I know there's an autosave feature with other applications these days, but it's really good practice regardless, because if you don't save often and you try to preview your web page, it may not show your most recent changes. So let's go ahead and take a look at the web page. And you can't see this right now, but I will go ahead and share this document. So we have a completely blank HTML document, but I want to emphasize incremental steps in creating your websites. By default, web pages are pretty much black and black text on a white background while using a Times New Roman font. So let's get started with HTML and start with something called an HTML tag. I think I probably should share more of my screen so that you can kind of see this, but let's go ahead and focus in on Sublime. So here we will add a head tag that contains a title tag. So what you want to do is type in head and press the tab button, and it automatically formats your head tag for you. And what you want to do is actually kind of separate the tags to kind of show the contents within that container, I guess you could say. Type in title, and again, press tab, and it will format for you. And in this case, I just want to mention that it's a common practice to indent your tags and line them up accordingly. It's mainly for legibility purposes. In other words, it's about being able to follow your code easily, which is important in developing and maintaining websites. So here, let's go ahead and just call the title My First Web Page. I'll save that, and let's go ahead and switch over to the browser to see what it did. And I will do a refresh, and as you see at the very top here, it says My First Web Page, and that's pretty much where things begin. So let's switch back to Sublime. Everything written within a head tag is known as metadata. I should note that metadata is information that isn't seen on the web page itself. In the case of a title tag, you can see this at the top of the browser, like you just saw. Other meta tags include a description, which is the text that search engines like Google's can display under search results. There used to be an old one for keywords, but more common ones include adding data for device processing, that is whether for desktop computers, mobile devices, and that kind of thing. This is also where you can add the aforementioned CSS or styling and more advanced functionality with JavaScript. I digress, but let's continue and preview our web page, or continue with the exercise. And yeah, let's see here. Let's start writing some text in the actual page itself. So the heading tag. Think of a newspaper with its headlines and subheaders. In HTML, there are 6 versions of this headline. The most common ones are H1, H2, and H3, with H1 being the most prominent. As the numbers increase, the heading tag moves down the hierarchy of importance. Heading tags go up until H6. When starting to write on the actual HTML web page, we need to establish a body tag. Much like how the head tag encapsulates the title tag, we need to do similarly. The body tag contains everything that you can see on the web page. So again, I'm going to type in body and press the tab button, and you will see that it automatically formatted it for us here. And now we want to add a header or heading tag with H1. Press tab, and I will go ahead and say this is an H1 header. Save. And I'm going to switch over into our browser to see what changes it made. So there you go. You can see that we made the change. We see the Times New Roman font in black, and that's pretty much the default. Let's include the other heading tags for demo purposes and see exactly what that does. So for an H2 example, and I'm just going to go ahead and copy this, this text. H3, again, type in the tag and press tab, and then this is an H3 example. H4 example. Let's copy that to be a little bit faster. H5. And lastly, H6. And again, let's go ahead and see what changes that made. So as you can see, the hierarchy kind of decreases, or H6 is the lowest, least important, while H1 is the most important. So we can start with text or a paragraph tag. And let's go back to Sublime. So a paragraph tag is denoted by one letter, which is P. As you can guess, it is used to define an actual paragraph. So let's go ahead and do that and add it just after the H1 tag. So type in P again if you didn't see that. Press tab and it establishes the paragraph tag. I'm going to paste in what's called dummy text or fake Latin, just to speed things up. Again, indent accordingly, and what you do is paste in or type in the information between the tags. So let's save and then preview again. So we can see that our text is now included here. It looks like it formatted some of my previous changes. So, but that's okay. It's good to incrementally save and build your websites. So I'll go ahead and add a second paragraph for demo purposes. And I will go ahead and do that under the second header. So let me switch over. So I'll add another paragraph tag and copy in this other sample text. And you don't see my browser, so I will switch over and refresh, and we see that paragraph has been added. Fantastic. So let's get started with text formatting basics. In Microsoft Word, Google Docs, or any kind of word processing software, we usually get options to bold words, italicize them, or underline text. To do that in HTML is pretty easy. We use the B, I, or U tags, respectively, and you can enclose some text within these tags to enable the format. So let's go ahead and see how that's done. I don't want, let me erase this part. Excuse me for a second. Do that. Just make sure that you don't see that initially. Lastly, and this. Okay, so let's say that we want to bold this section here. All we have to do is press the B tag again, press the tab to close it, it's kind of nice that you can just select and select the tag or end tag and paste it in there. That makes sense. So this entire section within the bold tag will be bold. And let's go ahead and switch over to see that. So as you see, it added the bold effect to these words here. So similarly, we want to italicize, and we can type in I and type in the tab or press the tab button, and let's end the italicized to be right there. Save, and again, we'll see the effect. And as you can see right here, it has italicized these words. And similarly, we will do the underline. Let's just say here. So let's start by pressing U, tab, and make sure the ending tag goes to the very end of the word. Press save. Let's go back to the browser to see what it does. And as you can see, it does exactly that. So now we want to talk about hyperlinks. Hyperlinks in HTML enable clickable text that load a new web page into your browser. This is also applicable to images, which we will get to in a bit. But to do this, we use the anchor tag, which is denoted with the use of an A tag. So let's go back to our Sublime text editor. And let's say that we want to connect these words in particular to a page. And if I press the A and then press tab, we will see that it creates this A tag for you. This extra information here at the beginning, href equals in the quotes, is an example of an asset. These are extra facets of the tag itself, and I will get to assets in a bit. In this case, we have the href asset, which stands for hypertext reference. This is where you will type in a new URL or another page. For beginning purposes, I will just link this to another page in the directory called HTML or test.html. As you can see here to the left, I have a document called test.html. So I will go ahead and type that in between the quotes, test.html. So what should happen is that when you click on these words, nulla pulvinar, we should go to the new page called test.html. And let's take a look. So let me refresh. And again, we have the nulla pulvinar, which is in this kind of purplish, bluish color and also underline. But this darker blue or purple means that it was already clicked from before, but I kind of did this exercise prior to this lesson. So when you click on this, we should go to that web page called test.html. And that's what I have for test.html. So let's just go back one page to go back. Let's see. So I mentioned the color. I should probably mention something about relative versus absolute pages right now, but I won't get into that. Starting out, just add all your pages into the same directory. So getting started with HTML with other beginner tags. Wanted to mention this. You will eventually see things like BR or HR. These are some of the exceptions to the open and close tag and only have to be written once. BR stands for a break, and you can think of this as as forcing a new line to occur somewhere. And HR stands for horizontal rule, which works kind of like a physical content divider. So let's add this to the web page. And let me switch over into Sublime, the text editor. And let's say that I want to force a line break, I don't know, let's say right here. And again, you only have to write it once and you don't have to close it. And then let's include that horizontal rule just to speed things up right between the first paragraph content and the second paragraph content. And let's see what that does. So as you can see, we have a line break right after where we specified right here. And then right after the first paragraph content, we have the whole horizontal rule, which spans the entire web page. And that's exactly what we want. So let me talk a little bit about tables in HTML. And this is a little bit of a controversial kind of thing because people used to design web pages specifically with tables, and they use it to place certain sections on, the page. And tables are mainly to display tabular data right now. And there are many facets to it. But for introductory sake, I'm going to create a quick table. They're comprised of rows which are horizontal and denoted by the TR tag, and cells which use the TD tag. Columns are also configured, but is for another lesson. So let me go ahead and do that. So under this third header, I'm going to add a table. So type in table, press the tab button, and let's create a little space here. Let's actually indent that so we can kind of see that a little bit better. And in all honesty, we should probably do that for these other sections to be consistent. Whoops. And then p tag there. Cool. So to start a table, we type in the table tag and then type in tr to start a row. And then in the first, we want to establish a few cells, and I'm just going to create a 2x2 table. So we want to establish our first cell, and we want to create another cell, so we add 2 TD tags or 2 TD sections within the row. It's actually a good idea to separate these like this, so that way you can kind of see where you're placing the information. And let's add another row, very similar. And let's say you want to show a score of a game. And I'm a big Bulls fan, so let me reference the finals from many years ago in '98, Chicago versus Utah. And so say we had the Chicago Bulls that scored 87 points, and the Utah Jazz scored 86. So let's see what that does. So I put this under the third header, and you can see here that it kind of has it in a column and row format, but you can't necessarily see the specific cell. So let me kind of back up a little bit. To make sure that it has lines, we have an asset called border, and you establish that by typing in border equals 1 in quotation marks. And yeah, let's go back. And as you can see, you have the border around the whole thing. And we can, hold on for a second. Okay, lost my place here. All right, so that's an example of a table. And let me go ahead and move on to adding images. Adding images is another tag naturally. You can use the image tag spelled IMG. Image is another exception to the tag rule of not needing to close. So let's take a look. I've already downloaded an image and placed it into a subdirectory here on the left-hand side, and it's called Halloween, just to be festive. And let's make that what's called a hero image. So I'm going to place it at the very top and place it within a paragraph tag actually. So what I'm going to do is type in IMG and press a tab. And as you can see here that we have 2 additional assets called SRC and alt tag rather. One is source, SRC is short for source, and the other is for alternate text. You will need to add your image file name reference, and the again, the alt is metadata for the actual image. This is a required addition for visually impaired browsers, meaning that not all browsers will display the image. In its place, alt tags are displayed. So you should provide a description for what the image actually is. So for under source, we want to make sure that we are referencing the image. And this is, how do you describe this? So relative reference to where the file is. So we type in images, which is the folder, and the name of the actual image. And for the alt, we'll just say Halloween picture. And I believe this is going to look fairly large, but let's take a look at what this does. So refresh. And again, as I was saying, this is a huge picture. And let's go ahead and fix that with some asset adjustments. So what we want to do is type in an asset called width equals, and I will say 100% to span the entire width of the web page. And that should pretty much do it. Let me switch over into, again, the browser. Refresh. And as you can see, we have the big image at the very top. And that's exactly what we want to do. So let's look at adding video to a web page. This is definitely a longer discussion, but I will just use a YouTube example. It's pretty commonplace now and is probably the easiest way of embedding videos. Long story short, there's definitely a lot of hurdles if you actually reference your own video from your own directory. And ever since YouTube, you know, became more commonplace, it's pretty much solved everything. So let's go ahead and do that. Right now, let's look at a particular example. Let me pull up that link. You can visit. So this is my intro to WordPress class that I gave earlier in the summer. And usually when you pull up a YouTube video, there is a code that, or snippet of code, as I was saying before. But you can find that by clicking on share and clicking on this embed button. And you can see here, this should start to look a little familiar. This is HTML and with a bunch of assets and settings. So you can go ahead and copy this. These are different options for the video, but let's not focus on that right now. So I copied that code, and let's switch back to the editor, and I will just replace this second paragraph with that code. And I will rename this to be Intro to WordPress with Patrick. And so let's go ahead and see what that does. So again, we have our banner image and we have our video. Pretty basic, pretty easy. Again, you're free to ask me any questions, whether please feel free to watch this video. This is more advanced web design with WordPress. And if you have any questions on that, again, you're more than welcome to ask me. So everything works. It's compatible on the different platforms from Mac, which I'm on right now, to PC to Linux. So I wanted to mention a few notes on attributes. You can have multiple attributes assigned to HTML tags, and just like you were seeing in the code that we were copying from YouTube, there's plenty. So assets are separated by space. Some they have some kind of shorter keyword or and equated to some kind of value in quotes using the equal sign. You can reference attributes within HTML documentation and look it up. And again, please feel free to ask me about any questions that you have. So let's move on to some kind of other HTML things. And I already went through a lot of this. And, so let's get into a little bit of the intermediate HTML. There's something called the div tag. You will see this often, and it is a way to separate your content. It's pretty much short for divider. So let's do that with some sections in our example. Let's define the big image that I said was the hero image and the video section. So let's go ahead and switch over to Sublime again. So this particular line here that you see on 6 will define this as hero image. So let's type in div and press tab. And again, we see that it opened the tag and then closed it. And I'm just going to paste in the closing tag there and indent all the content just for, again, consistency and legibility. To define this or to assign a name to it, we usually either give it an ID or a class name, and these are also another form of assets. And I'm just going to go ahead and use the ID asset and call this hero-image. We do not want to use spaces when you're using class names or IDs. It's just one of those things with HTML. And it will make more sense as you continue to practice, but spaces are not a good thing. Spaces can be used when you are defining assets or typing in your content, your paragraph or your copy in your HTML web page. So as you see here, I've just kind of defined a section called hero image, and it's kind of a way to just further organize your document. There isn't necessarily anything that's going to happen, and let's go ahead and take a look. Where did that go? Let's switch over to the web page. And as you can see, it didn't really do any changes. And again, this is more for organization purposes, and over time you will see that this is a way to kind of target this content for styling purposes, CSS purposes that is, or JavaScript. I can get into a little bit of an example in a bit. So let's switch over. I just wanted to mention some notes on HTML5 tags, which is pretty much the standard for today. There are tags called header and footer, which if you think about, your typical Word document or Google Docs, you do have your header section, you do have your footer section, and you can format HTML web pages similarly. This is an extension of that div tag that I just showed you. There's the nav tag, which is short for navigation, and as you see on many websites, including here up on the PowerPoint Online, this is an example of a nav section, and you can enclose this area within that nav tag. Section is another form of div, I guess you could say. It's just an explicit keyword. An article, mainly for blog purposes, but if you have a news site, you can kind of section off, articles or, writing, that kind of thing. Let's see. That's pretty much it for HTML5. So let's do a basic CSS demo. What was I going to do? You've got about 10 minutes, so let's kind of get going here. New share. So again, I was saying that by default, HTML pages have a white background with black text. And let's say that we want to change the background color to orange, just to be festive for Halloween. So how you do that is by assigning an attribute through CSS. And you do that by typing in this tag here within head, the header, called style. So type in style, press the tab to complete it. How we want to format this or how we want to apply this is by typing in body, and then your assets are enclosed in these curly braces, and you usually just separate it like that. And so background color, you can just type in background, and the colors are denoted in what's called a hexadecimal format, and you can look that up. It's just a bunch of numbers and letters together. And let me copy the orange color that I had picked out. So hexadecimal colors start with a number sign or a pound, and is usually a combination of 6 letters and numbers together. You can actually shorten this. If it were all the same letter or number, you can just have it as a length of 3 numbers or 3 letters. So if I were to use color white, which is 6 F's together, you can just note it like this, and it will still show correctly. But in this case, we are using this orange. So let's go ahead and save that. Switch over to see exactly what that does. Where did that go? So again, I changed the background color to orange, and now we should see an orange color in the background, which it did. And I will leave the text to be black, just to be festive. So let's go back to Sublime. I want to make one more change. And I want to change the way the font looks, because we have this Times New Roman, which is kind of a default thing again, but I want to use the Arial font, which is just a sans serif font, and I believe we can just say sans serif. Font family refers to a grouping of fonts together, and you kind of separate them with a comma. So as you see here, I have the attribute font-family, and you separate the value from the asset with a colon, and you end each of these assets with a semicolon, just to be clear. So let's see exactly what that does. If I refresh, we will see that the font has changed now. Perfect. And lastly, we've got about 10 minutes. Just wanted to do a basic JavaScript demo. JavaScript is really where the power is. It's a longer discussion. I could probably do one class just on JavaScript alone, but for our entry-level and introductory purposes, I'm just going to write a basic JavaScript function, as they call it. So let's say that we want to click on some words that activate a pop-up that says something. Let's go ahead and define that. So what we do to establish JavaScript is type in the script tag in the header or within the header. And let me describe this function. So in the case of JavaScript, we write function and then say, we call the function something. So I will call it pop-up message. And this is a format called camel case. Again, when we're dealing with code-related things, it's really not a good thing to have spaces. So the compromise is to use camel case. So when you right after you declare the name of the function, you put a pair of parentheses and then you open it up with a set of curly braces. And what I want to do is have a pop-up, and how you do that in JavaScript is say window.alert, and you open it up with parentheses and enclose whatever text that you want in or within the parentheses, or quotes rather. So you have clicked on these words. And much like CSS, you end your lines of code in JavaScript with a semicolon. And it's definitely important to do that. Just a note for later. So how you activate this is using an anchor tag on your set of words. So let's say that, oh gosh, sorry about that. I will change it over into my Sublime. So again, I have the script here from lines 9 to 13 within a script tag. So you type in function, type in the name in camel case, followed by a set of parentheses. You have your curly braces and your script or your JavaScript right there. So let's say that you want to click on these words and make sure or activate this function. So what you do is press A, encapsulate these words with the end tag. And in this case, we are just going to put a blank for href because it doesn't refer to anything, but what you do here to activate that is type onClick equals and then the name of the function. And you want to make sure that the parentheses are there because it is JavaScript. So this is just an example of JavaScript. Let's switch over into the browser now, see how that works. So let's refresh, and we have this other text here that is underlined because it is an anchor tag, and I expect to see a pop-up with those words I wrote. And there you go. You have clicked on these words. Press OK to release that window, and that's pretty much a basic example of JavaScript. So other notes. We've got 5 minutes. This only scratches the surface. There are many more HTML tags to go through, and you can view this on websites such as W3 Schools or W3.org, or even Mozilla's documentation, the company that is responsible for Firefox, and that is the one I recommend the most. I've long promoted lynda.com, where you can find great tutorials. If you choose to explore HTML further, you are more than welcome to reach out for questions, and I mean that. Again, the email is medialab@lakeforestlibrary.org. So again, some resources. Sublime Text you can find at www.sublimetext.com, one word. And again, it is free to use. For graphics or pictures or sample video, you can use Canva or Pexel, which are two of my go-tos. Hosting is a different subject altogether, but it, you know, it's space online. It's technically the hard drive online, like the cloud, I guess you could say, where you can access and put your files, and they configure it so that it's connected to a URL. So in the case of like, YouTube or Facebook or even my personal site, you go through hosting companies in order to attach your HTML files and more advanced files like CSS and JavaScript to be displayed on the public browser. So there are companies like GoDaddy. I'm sure you've all heard of that. I'm more partial to companies like Bluehost, and I don't necessarily promote GoDaddy too much. But Bluehost is one that I definitely recommend. And again, if you have any questions, even if it is GoDaddy, please feel free to ask. Squarespace is another kind of newer service out there. Technically, you don't have to save your HTML files locally, but you can work with them online completely, and you can manipulate your code as needed. Everything's kind of encapsulated within their website. And WordPress, I mentioned that before, it's a blogging software which has evolved into what's called a content management system. This is completely powered by PHP, which is the more dynamic side of web design. But a lot of PHP integrates HTML, and so a lot of that would look familiar. So now, if you have questions, please feel free to unmute yourselves or share in the chat. Let me switch over to that. Let's see. Will we get the PowerPoint handout? That is a question from Jack. You know what? Let me see if I can share this. I'm not sure how to share this. I can share this with you directly, Jack. If any of the rest of you want the copy of the PowerPoint, I'd be more than happy to copy you on this. Completely fine. But Jack, just wanted to mention that this will probably be uploaded to our YouTube channel, and I will have that, that link in just a bit.
I would like it.
Jane, was that you?
Yes, I would like a copy of that.
Yeah, no problem. Okay.
You have our email addresses?
Yes, I believe I do. Let me just double check. Just want to make sure that I have everything. That's the wrong link. It's virtual. Why do I not see this? Need to log in. I'm not sure why I'm not logged in yet. And events. Yeah, I believe you're here registered, so I believe I should have that. And let me just make a note before I forget.
PowerPoint.
Yes, and Jack. Okay. Jack, looks like you're gonna go. Thanks for being here. Could you recommend books or other sources about web design for beginners? That's a great point. Lynda.com is definitely one place I'd go to because it is free to use with our library card, and it has definitely a lot of resources that is applicable to beginners as well. Definitely just Google. I think, what was that website that I often used? Can't think of it off the top of my head for some reason. Web design resources. Smashing Magazine. That was one of the ones that I used a lot. And so I would definitely recommend that. And, you know, you can search any of these recommendations, but Smashing Magazine is one. Again, lynda.com is definitely a great tutorial, great place to learn a lot of different things. And again, you're more than welcome to ask me any questions about this, because I'm, you know, that's been my policy for a long time. Definitely answer any questions for digital things, spanning not just web design, but all things digital. And that's why I'm in the Media Lab right now. Not at the moment, but you know what I mean. I'm the Media Lab assistant. So again, the email is, I'll just show in a second.
Can I ask you something?
Sure.
I'm just going to ask you what you think of the Wix.com. It has it's an easy application, but I don't know if it's a good way to learn it or just experience. Have you tried it?
Wix, I'm a little familiar with. I know what it's about. I haven't actually kind of gone into it. It's definitely an introductory kind of service, and I know it kind of functions similarly to WordPress.com. I believe they're fairly user-friendly, but know that there are some restriction, and they will try to, you know, get your, essentially get you to pay for their services.
Subscribe,
eventually.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
you can explore it for sure, but just know that, you know, once you start to understand their ecosystem, that they're pretty much going to lure you into paying them eventually. So,
Yes, that's what I was thinking. Okay.
but if you do, again, if you run into web design issues, you're more than welcome to ask me. That's why I'm in the Media Lab again. So,
Okay.
let's see. I guess that's pretty much it. Does anyone else have any other questions? No? All
Don't
right.
quite know where to begin.
Well, again, you can feel free to ask me random questions. I'm more than open for it. I mean, I've been dealing with this for a very long time. Again, I've taught, again, junior high and high school students who didn't really understand this stuff, but now they're pretty proficient, and I'm very proud of them. You know, I can do the same for a lot of other people as well. So,
Is it best to start with a small project like a club, or is there a sample in like some kind of one of these dummies type web design for dummies or something like that? Are there some exercises to start?
yeah, I believe those books do have it, but again, I will kind of refer you to lynda.com again, because it's number one.
Okay.
It's free to use, again, with your library card, and it's a fantastic resource. I've had a talk on Instagram, as well as my last blog post for the Media Lab about using lynda.com. So please, you know, if you have any questions or want a little bit of an introductory to lynda.com, please, you know, refer to that article. So it takes you through the steps of how to log in, and again, with any questions regarding that, you're more than welcome to ask me.
Lynda.com, just go right to that?
Mm-hmm. But if you need like some guidance how to use it with your library card, I wrote an article about how to do that, and it's on our Media Lab webpage.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that's great.
So I guess that's pretty much it. And let me wrap up the presentation. Let me see if there's anything else here. Oh, so thank you everyone for being here. The link below is a form where you can add some feedback or add some notes for me. Please feel free to fill that out. Let's see. And lastly, got this. So again, the email address to reach me or my colleague Kristen in the Media Lab is medialab@lakeforestlibrary.org. We check them daily, and so I'll be sure to answer your questions if you have them. We are available for an hour appointment. That is incorrect on the slide. It is not 30 minutes. It is an hour-long appointment, and we are doing these virtually because of current arrangements, and we talk in real time. It's just as like we are there in person, and we have a nice system set up so that we can, help you with your digital needs. We've been doing an assortment of projects from Photoshop to, creating photo books. Some have needed some guidance on photography. Some have needed guidance with video editing. Some with more advanced video techniques, that kind of thing. I'm helping some patrons with podcasting. I've helped others with a little bit of web design as well, but I've spanned a huge spectrum of all things creative. So, it's been a wonderful experience to deal with a lot of the patrons. So please, if you have any questions, you are more than welcome to ask me anything. Let's see. Again, just wanted to mention that we are on Facebook and Instagram, and we are doing live sessions. I've done a few of them myself, but the adult services librarians have contributed a lot, as well as some of the youth services as well. So please check that out. On our YouTube channel, this is where we post recordings of our classes, and you can just visit our account there. You don't need to type in user. It's just like this, LFK ref. That's for Lake Forest reference. And lastly, my colleague, I believe, is not teaching a class in the next month, I think. So, but I'm teaching the next two web design fundamentals on a repeat of this class on the 10th. I might have a little bit of a different presentation and an introduction to WordPress, which is a class that I taught earlier in the summer. I'm doing that on the 23rd. So if that interests you, please feel free to sign up. I believe that's either in the afternoon or what day is the 23rd?
Tuesday.
It's a Tuesday. I believe it's in the afternoon then. So I guess that sums everything up for now. Thank you everyone for being here. I appreciate it. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. But yeah, take care everybody, and have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.